Even before his draft night, Zion Williamson and the New York Knicks were linked because it was expected that the Knicks were going to get the number one overall pick and use it to get Zion Williamson. Unfortunately, they ended up with the third overall pick. They got RJ Barrett. The Pelicans got Zion with the number one overall pick, and the rest is history. Fast forward a few years later, and now the Zion situation in New Orleans has not looked great, and Zion's work ethic has come into question. But according to Stephen A. Smith of ESPN, he believes that Zion is in the wrong market, and if he was in the right market, that he would be unlocked and be more dedicated. We're going to look into exactly what market he's talking about, if that's not obvious already, and what a Zion Williamson trade would look like for the New York Knicks. We're going to break down all of this and so much more today on the Knicks Digest. Zion Williamson to the New York Knicks rumors are never going to go away as long as Zion is in the league, because there's always going to be a link or a connection for Zion to be in New York. One of the main connections seems to be a player on the New York Knicks currently in RJ Barrett, given his relationship with Zion. But more than anything else, according to Stephen A. Smith from ESPN, he believes that if Zion was in New York, Zion would be more dedicated. And this is actually a great thing to talk about because a lot of fans have that same notion and share that same belief. They believe that if Zion was in New York or a different situation, that he would be more dedicated. And the fact that he's with the Pelicans makes him feel the way he feels, and because of that, doesn't want to play up to his potential because he doesn't want to be in that market. Stephen A. Smith essentially stated the following. He believes that Zion's in a market he doesn't want to be in. Stephen A. Smith suggests that Zion would be more locked in if he was with the New York Knicks. And this is actually a shared belief by a lot of people in the New York Knicks and in the NBA alone, because they believe that Zion, given the issues he had with management, with Griffin, with the team, with his injuries, how his injuries were handled by the Pelicans early on. There are so many things you can talk about in regards to why Zion has a bad relationship with the Pelicans. So the link to the New York Knicks becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. Also, you have RJ Barrett on the team. That relationship also is going to come into play when you're talking about trading for Zion Williamson or why Zion would want to come to the New York Knicks. But more importantly, the fact what Stephen A. Smith is saying here, that he believes that Zion would be more locked in and he'd be more dedicated in New York speaks volumes, because he's not only saying that because he believes that. I'm sure a lot of people in his camp and people that he speaks with believes the same thing. And that's not the first time I'm hearing that. A lot of people on ESPN, a lot of people around the league believe that if Zion was in a different market, he would perform better. Now, a lot of people don't mention New York by name. Of course, Stephen A. Smith's going to mention New York by name because Stephen A. Smith is trying to recruit everybody and anybody to the New York Knicks. That's not a secret. So we have to take that into consideration as well, too. But I think there's some truth to the fact that he believes, and a lot of people in the league believe, that Zion would be better if he was in a different market. This was Stephen A. Smith's exact words when he was speaking about Zion Williamson and why he should be in the New York Knicks. I don't think he cares enough, speaking about him being in New Orleans. I'm not saying he doesn't care. I'm talking about that fire, that passion, because I believe he's in a market he don't want to be in. I believe that if he was in New York or someplace where he really, really wanted to be, we would see a more dedicated Zion to his physicality. That's a very interesting take by Stephen A. Smith. I don't agree with it because, in my opinion, the injury parts and the overweight part, are you telling me he wouldn't be overweight if he was with New York? There's a lot of restaurants in New York. Would he not go there? So I don't believe that in that case. I also don't believe that he would be injured less if he played with New York. I think the injury concern would still be there because of his play style and how much he weighed when he came into the league. So there's always going to be that risk of injury concern regardless of where he went. You might be able to sell me on the fact that he always wanted to be in New York. He never wanted to be with the Pelicans. He wanted to play for the New York Knicks and be in that market, be in that environment. And the fact that he wasn't in that market led him to play this type of way. So maybe you can make an argument for that. But the injuries and the overweight concerns, I don't think those go away if he joins the New York Knicks. So that's my little pushback to Stephen A. Smith. But until I see Zion Williamson play consistent, meaningful, engaged basketball, I don't want Zion Williamson on the New York Knicks because I can't trust that he'll be available when the New York Knicks would need him most. If you can't be counted on to show up for your team in the playoffs, then what good are you to a team to trade for? If you're not good enough to show up for your team when it matters the most, like in playoff situations, then what are you being traded for? Because if you can't show up when the lights are brightest, then you might hurt the team versus help them. Because it doesn't matter if you get them to a dance. It matters at what you do when you're at the dance. And if you can't do anything when you're there, then why did you help get us here? Because now we're floundering because you're not available to help. We have to think about that if we're going to make trades. And speaking about trades, one of the main topics that normally come up when speaking about Zion is what a potential deal for him would look like between the Knicks and the New Orleans Pelicans. Well, thanks to NBA Analysis Network, we now have an idea of what a potential trade package between the Knicks and the Pelicans could look like for Zion. This is the trade proposal that NBA Analysis Network provided. The New Orleans Pelicans would receive Evan Fournier, Mitchell Robinson, Emmanuel Quickley, a 2026 first-round pick, likely unprotected, a 2028 first-round pick, likely unprotected, and a 2030 first-round pick from the New York Knicks, again, likely unprotected. And the New York Knicks would receive forward Zion Williamson. So comment in the chat below. Do you like this trade? Would you do this trade? Yes or no? I can't wait to hear your reaction and your thoughts as well. But if you're asking me and my opinion on this, if I could take away one of those picks, if I could add a protection to one of those picks, I would do this deal. And here's the reason why. Emmanuel Quickley is likely out the door anyways. The Knicks are going to have to pay him. The cap is only going to get more tight for the New York Knicks as they look to add talent. And not only that, you have to get off of Evan Fournier. This trade package allows you to do that. The one thing that may hurt a little bit is the Mitchell Robinson in the package right there, because Mitchell Robinson is your anchor on defense. If you trade him away, then what are you going to do on defense in terms of players going in and out of the paint? Because he was the main advantage you had on defenses against other NBA teams in the league. Not only that, but he helped pull down a lot of rebounds. He was one of the leaders. I think he is actually the leader as of last season in terms of offensive rebounds. So you got to put all of that in context if you're going to trade him away and what you're going to get back. Also, the argument could be made is, how many games is Zion going to play for the New York Knicks next season? He hasn't been able to stay healthy in any year he's played in his entire professional career in the NBA. So what is going to be the difference in New York? Do we really think him being more dedicated is going to stop those injury concerns, those overweight concerns? What if the New York market distracts him more than the Pelicans market did, given the amount of attractions Times Square, New York City, and everything around New York has to offer? Do you think that RJ Barrett would be enough to keep him grounded and in check? Because I don't know if that would keep Zion Williamson out of the New York City lifestyle. I think he would adopt to it very fast, and part of that lifestyle is being active at night, and I think he would be one of the players to do that if he was in New York. So I don't know if RJ Barrett alone is enough to keep him grounded, but maybe that relationship and the market and the sponsors and everything else about the market makes him more locked into basketball, changes his mindset, and makes him more viable for a New York Knicks team that's looking to contend in the East. Because if Zion is consistent and healthy and playing game after game after game, he could arguably be one of the best players in the league. The problem is, when we speak about Zion, it's a lot of ifs and maybes. It's never definites. And every time you talk about making a deal that has to trade away a lot of assets, especially in this deal, because if all of those picks are unprotected and it doesn't work out for the New York Knicks, the Pelicans could have even more assets to use to get themselves a superstar, because they already have a lot of assets to begin with. Now you add New York Knicks picks that if it does go the opposite direction, and if the Knicks, unfortunately, let's say, face the injury bug, Zion doesn't do what you need him to do, and they end up being bad, and then the Pelicans get those picks and they end up being very good picks, and maybe a deep draft, and they can use those picks and flip them for a superstar, they may be ending up in the better spot than the New York Knicks. That's why, especially under this new CBA, it's important to make sure that the New York Knicks make the right deal and the smart deal. Because if you make the wrong deal, it might take you even more years to correct that mistake than it did before. Because the CBA is unfriendly, to say the least. But leave your comments below because I would love to hear from you guys, and I would love to hear your thoughts on a potential Zion Williamson to the New York Knicks trade. But until next time, guys, my name is Troy. Thanks for watching the Knicks Digest. We're out of here. Peace.